Thank you, Mr. President. It is late, and I'd like to say I'll be brief, but that's a very subjective term. So I'll be between Senator Lieu and Senator Walczyk, somewhere in the middle of it. So, as a leader, whenever you do these closing comments, you think about things you're going to say on behalf of your conference. You think about things you should say. And, of course, we always do these at like 4 in the morning, right? So, and the truth is, not only am I not my best at 4 in the morning, you really don't feel like doing all the comments you wrote at 10 p.m. So that was the strategy. Great job. Great job. But I just want to, first of all, I want to thank, I think the most important thing at the end of session is to thank everyone who helps make the New York State Senate run. Because there's a lot of folks who don't sit in these chairs, whose names are never on a ballot, whose names aren't up in the newspaper, probably much to their appreciation, but they make this place run on behalf of the 20 million people who live in New York State. And they help us do what we have to do. So to all of the staff, both in this room and out there, who help make us look as good as we can be looked, as good as we can, and who help us do our job. I just want to thank the staff collectively, Republican and Democrat, and I would like a round of applause for all of them. No doubt on both sides, and I'm sure Senator Stewart Cousins will mention her staff. I do want to thank our staff, our council staff, who spend a lot of time working with our counterparts across the aisle to get bills in, to get changes made, so that these bills can be put on the floor and hopefully put into law. And it's a hard process. Even when we were in the majority, you don't get all the bills you want. Things happen. The Assembly makes a change and screws them up or whatever, however it goes. But it's tough. But I want to thank our staff, again, Council's office, for the work that they do, working with Majority Council's office, to get these calendars in, make sure we have time to brief. Much of our staff is briefing these bills. Certainly in the minority, they're briefing us at 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning. They're briefing us on very little sleep. Even if they're briefing us at 10 in the morning, they probably didn't sleep much the night before as they were going through these bills. And all the great questions you heard, most of them were written by staff. Not all of them, but a lot of them. And so I want to thank our staff, certainly, for the work that they do. I want to thank our members. It is a privilege to serve in leadership in this body. It is certainly a privilege to be a conference leader. And for me, to be chosen by your colleagues, by your peers, to lead them. We're all senators. And to be chosen by senators, I'm sure the majority leader feels exactly the same way. It's really a very high honor. And it is not always easy, but it is certainly an honor and a pleasure. And I want to thank my members for how you conducted yourself on the floor, for the debate, for the questions, and for the job that you did. So I want to thank you and, of course, for letting me lead this conference. It is one of the great honors of my life, Mr. President, to lead the Republican conference here in the State Senate. I want to thank the Majority Leader, Senator Stewart Cousins, for her partnership, for her cooperation, for her understanding, and for the role she plays as the leader of the body, but also the leader of her conference, and for working with me as we try to get through what we have to get through on behalf of the people of New York State. I want to thank Senator Gianaris for what he does here on the floor. And, of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't thank my deputy leader, Senator Lanza. Senator Lanza, as you might know, doesn't really leave the chair a whole lot. Now, I've told him he can leave to go to the bathroom, get something to eat, get away from Senator Gianaris for a few minutes, whatever it is, right? But he really doesn't. He sits here. I came over here. He's got bottles of water. It's like he's a hostage out here. But he does not like to leave because he takes his role being a floor leader, being that floor general, very seriously. And there's a lot of hours spent on this floor, not just today, but the whole week and all session. And certainly on behalf of our conference, I want to thank Senator Gianaris for your leadership here as well. He thought he was going to be the most fashionable guy, and he wore the seersucker suit, and then he saw Senator Walczyk, and that was out the window. So, very briefly, Mr. President, look, it's no surprise. It's been a long session. There's been a lot of twists and turns this session, from the judicial nominations to the budget to, here we are today. And there's probably no secret that our conference feels very differently about a lot of the legislation. Not all of it. Not all of it. If you probably looked at the number of bills that were passed, many of them were passed overwhelmingly or unanimously. But there's a lot of bills that our conference has very real disagreements about, and you saw that in the debate. And it's a philosophical difference. I really believe at our core, and I think it was crystallized in the elections bill, the changing of the election. And I was thinking about, what I was going to talk about, and I wanted to boil it down because it's late and wanted to just get to the one bill. But I think it crystallizes the difference between our conference and the majority. This is a conference that believes that the smaller the form of government, the better. The bigger it gets, the worse it gets. The more divorced from the people. So whether it's your village government, your city government, your town government, your county government, I firmly believe that that is the level of government certainly that is closest to the people and that produces the best result and that ensures our principles, which are freedom, public safety, affordability. Those are our principles here in this conference. And generally speaking, when we talk about Albany, I don't believe in my time here, both majority and minority, I haven't seen a ton of solutions that came out of this place that made life infinitely better for people on the ground. And certainly in Washington, D.C., I think we can all agree that's even more the case, because you're just getting bigger. And yet, what we did with that bill, and I know we heard things like, voter turnout. And, so obviously the argument being that we are against voter turnout, which means we must be against democracy. Nothing could be further from the truth. I've watched over the past several years as this body has made several election law changes. We have made it easier and easier and easier to vote, or at least we've said that. We've said we're making it easier to vote. You can vote early, you can vote absentee, you can change your registration very close to the election day, you can register to vote very close to the election day. You can have an absentee ballot that's not even postmarked. We've made many, many changes, all in the name of boosting voter turnout, making it easier to vote. And yet still, apparently, that's not enough. So we got to condense these elections. I don't believe it's about turnout. I firmly believe it's about nationalizing elections. That's what it's about. And we know why. We know why Senator, the sponsor, during the debate said, turnout, what's the problem? when you nationalize elections here in the state of New York, that is going, and if you look at the numbers, Republican voters turn out at a higher rate in midterm years. They also turn out in the even years, but they turn out at a higher rate in midterm years. Democrat voters tend to turn out big in national elections, predominantly presidential. Those are the numbers. Despite all the efforts we've made, those remain the numbers. So, what do? Let's merge them. That's the ticket. We'll merge the elections, and then hopefully that addresses the issue of turnout, but what it really does is it changes the outcome in local elections. And it absolutely will drown out local government elections, campaigns, and issues. There's no way it doesn't. There's no way it doesn't. When your average constituent turns on their TV and watches CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, whatever it is, they're not talking about the town board or the county legislature. They're talking about the presidential politics, Washington, D.C. That's true for most people. That's the level of politics they know. And we've seen the nationalization of politics due to social media and other reasons across the board. I see people running for school board talking about the southern border. So we know what it's really about. And our conference stands opposed to that because we believe in the primacy of local government. And they should have their own year to talk about local issues. And we see the results. Democrats vote for Republicans in those local years. National years, Republicans vote for Democrats because the issues are different. And that separation is key, and it's always been that way, and it has worked because everyone is, I think what Senator Martin said, everyone in my district is registered to vote, that wants to vote, and they are free to vote. And we've made it easier for them to vote. And that's not a bad thing. It's not a bad thing. I served for a year in a country where they didn't have the right to vote. And it was only people with guns that allowed them to go vote. So it is a good thing when people can turn out. And we should always encourage that. But to drown out local election years, to essentially nullify the importance of local elections in the effort of partisan politics, that's what this is. And let's not pretend that partisan politics don't ever enter this august chamber, because they do. They did before, and they do today, and they will in the future. That's a reality. The folks at home watching, they're smart enough to know whether it's 20% or 70%, they know that's what's going on here. So while we were disappointed with that and other bills, certainly the clean slate legislation and some others, I was proud of the way this conference has conducted ourselves the past week. And I will just say this, because I noticed on the floor, you know, things get a little tense, Mr. President. They get a little tense this time of year. People are tired. We're up late. But how we conduct ourselves, I think, is important. And how we conduct ourselves when we're having passionate debates is important to me. I know it's important to the majority leader because I've talked to her and she's affirmed that. And I know it's important to our conference. And so I would just remind my colleagues across the aisle that we do have a different governing philosophy that is represented by our constituents. We're not your bro, we're your colleagues. We're not stupid. We have a different way that we think government should be run. And Mr. President, we sleep just fine at night. Thank you for your indulgence. I want to thank the members. God bless.